What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Tom Rowland Podcast, brought to you by Brite. You know, if you listen to yesterday's podcast, you already know that FeedSpot had given us the #1 ranking of outdoor podcasts for 2024. And that kind of got me thinking. I thought, you know, we've gotten a lot of followers from that and some other things recently. And that got me thinking that a lot of these new people, welcome if you're one of these new people who are listening to the podcast for the first time or joined the podcast in 2024 and have heard the great conversations that we've had this year. We really had a lot of fantastic conversations over the years. I've done 946 episodes now, and of those, I've had some of the greatest conversations ever. I've learned a ton about myself. I've learned a ton about what it took for all these other people to achieve the success that they have. And I've loved to be able to share that with you. And I wanted to do a best of show today. And that's what we're getting ready to do. Go back to revisit some of those conversations and revisit some of the things that I found the most interesting or most profound about those conversations. So here we go.
How Bill Dance Became America's Favorite Fisherman, Episode 10.
After about a year, he said, doing the same thing, he said, we need a television show. And I said, okay, I think that's good. I've got the perfect guy to do it.
So this is 1968?
And now this was around that same time, 70, around 70. He said, you got the perfect guy for us to do it? And I said, I sure do. And this guy, we were rooming together, fishing the tournaments together, and I wouldn't be doing TV today if it wasn't for this guy. And he said, who's that? And I said, Jerry McInnes.
No kidding.
And he said, McInnes? And I said, yeah. Jerry and I have been traveling together. I've been helping Jerry shoot stuff, and Jerry's taught me a lot about television. And Jerry is your man. And he says, well, I've got a different idea. And I said, what's that, Cotton? And I love Cotton. Cotton Cordell made the hot spot and the red fin and a lot of great baits. And I loved him like a daddy. He said, no, I've got a better guy. And I said, okay, who's that? And he said, you. And I said, me? I said, Cotton, me on TV is like pouring perfume on a pig. I tell you what, I can't even spell television. I said, I can't, man, you got to be crazy. He said, no, I want you to do it. And I said, Cotton, I can't do a TV show. I don't know anything. He said, yep. Jerry's taught you a lot about it. And so I told Jerry, I said, Cotton wants me to do a TV show, Jerry. He says, do it. You can do it.
Now, did Jerry already have his show going
Yeah,
at all?
Jerry had a show going too. And I said, you think I can do it? And Jerry said, yeah, you sure you can do it? So Cotton bought me a camera just like the one I'd been shooting a little bit with a Scoop-It, Canon Scoop-It. And very simple. And so I went to a local TV station, and I knew the editor, and he showed me how to edit. And,
linear editing back then. Like linear editing.
Yeah.
Like you're cutting and
it was
taping
cutting, pasting, and all.
Yeah.
And he showed me basically how to do it. So I went to our CBS affiliate, and I went to the program director. And I said, I'd like to do a local fishing show for your network, your local station. And he said, no, I just don't think. I said, well, you did Get About Gaddis, sponsored by Liberty Mutual. And he said, yeah, but we just don't think there's a market for a local show. And I went, and I got really discouraged. Then I went to Al Michaels at the NBC affiliate. And I walked in, big old tall guy, and I walked in his office, and had a big burl walnut desk sitting there, and he got up. Can I help you? And I said, yes, sir. And I said, Brooks Brothers suit, about a $400 tie on, and I said, I had a pair of blue jeans. I didn't look too appealing, but I said, Mr. Grady, I'd like to talk to you about the possibility of doing a local fishing show. Well, what? And I said, a local fishing show. What is that? And I said, and I told him my format and how I wanted to do it. And he said, no, I don't think that's something, but no, we're not interested in anything like that. And I said, well, wait a minute, let me tell you what, I think it created a lot of local appeal. And so I went home and I was really discouraged.
Yeah.
And I said, this ain't going to work. I can't do this. And Diane said, what did I tell you about can't? And I said, what? She said, what did I tell you about the word can't? And I said, she said, I told you that word, get it out of your vocabulary. And she's always said, and I said, well, 3 doesn't want it, 5 doesn't want it. And she said, isn't ABC sports-minded? I said, yeah, I think. She said, they're always talking about sports entertainment on ABC. Why don't you go to ABC? I said, they probably don't want. What did I say? I said, she's not 5 feet tall, but dynamite comes in small packages.
Yes,
She
it
heard that
does.
expression. I said, I'll go see him in the morning. She said, what about this afternoon? Let me go in the morning. So I went over there, and I got over there about 11. I remember it was a little bit after 11. And the switchboard operator, never forget her. Her name was Elizabeth. And I saw it on the little names. I walked up and I said, Elizabeth? She said, yes, that's me. I said, who is your program director? She said, Lance Russell. And I said, is he in? She said, no, he went to lunch, but he'll be back by 2 if you'd like to come back. And I said, no, ma'am, I'll just wait. And she said, well, it's just a little bit after 11. That'll be a pretty good I said, that's fine, I'll wait. But I want to be here when he comes back. She says, well, okay. And so I just went over there and sat down.
Uh-huh.
And a little bit later, she said, would you like something to drink? And I said, no, ma'am, I'm fine. So she said, well, I'm going to get me a Coca-Cola. If you want one, I'll get you one. And I said, no, ma'am. She said, well, I'm getting you one. So she and I became good buddies. So she went and got me one. And she said, what do you do? And I said, well, I told her. And then she told me she liked to fish. And we struck up a conversation. And about 10 minutes of 1, she walked over and she said, guess what? Mr. Russell came up the back fire escape, back steps, and he's here. And he's ready to see you. I said, well, great. And she said, just go right on up the steps. And I'll never forget that green carpet. And I bounced up those steps, and I went down the hall, and there was a lady standing there, and she said, there's his office. And I walked in, and he stood up, and he had his hands like that. He walked around the end of his desk, and he stuck his hand out, and he said, Bill Dance. And I said, Mr. Russell. He said, call me Lance. Have a seat, Bill. And he said, better that. And he took his chair, and he pulled my chair up close to his desk. He said, sit down. What can I help you with? And I said, I want to do a local fishing show, and I want to do it here on Channel 13. And he said, you may not remember this. You know WBBJ? And I said, in Jackson, Tennessee, Channel 7. He said, that's right. I said, I've done a few shows there with Tony Laws. He said, yeah, Tony Laws did a local show there. He said, well, I used to do a local show there. And I said, you did? And he said, yeah, I was program director there before I came here. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And he said, tell me what you've got in mind. And I said, I'd like to do a local show. And I explained how I wanted to do it, how I had it formatted. And he says, okay. He said, I like the idea. When would you like to air it? And I said, Friday nights. Thursday night or Friday night for the weekend.
Yep.
He said, well, let me tell you what we need. We need 2 things. We need a pilot. I said, I don't even have a plane. We said, no. He said, you got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And then he started laughing. He said, a pilot, we need a show. And I said, okay. And I said, I can get that. And he said, we need a sponsor. And here it is, just a little bit after 1 o'clock.
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay, to sponsor the event. I said, all righty. I said, I can get the show, and let me see about the sponsor. He said, you work on that, and I'll see what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, thank you. And he said, let's talk later in the week. And I said, fine. And he said, if you come up with something, you let me know immediately, and I will. And I shook his hand. I went out the door, I got in my truck, and I went straight down to 2526 Elvis Presley Boulevard. And I walked in a building called Fabulous Surplus City. And I walked up to a guy named Billy Woods. I said, Billy, I got a chance to put a local fishing show on Channel 13 to air Thursday night or Friday night. And I'm telling you, I can sell you lots and lots of fishing tackle. I'll promise you. And he said, I know you can. And I said, would you be interested? Would you entertain the thought of sponsoring that? He said, absolutely. I said, what are you doing the next hour? He said, nothing. I said, will you ride with me out to Channel 13 and talk to Lance Russell? He said, I sure will. I said, come on. He got in my truck, and we drove out there, and I walked up to Elizabeth, and I said, is Mr. Russell still here? She said, he is. I said, would you ask him, can he see me? She said, yes. He said, come on up. I went up, walked in, and I said, Lance, this is Billy Woods. He's a manager of Surplus City. He said, I go in there all the time. I said, he's interested in sponsoring the show. He said, boy, you work fast. He said, let's talk. And we did a pilot. We did a rough that night.
UFC veteran Michael Chandler on mindset and the walk-on mentality, episode 618.
I was a wrestler myself, a wrestling coach, a wrestling parent, and hope to be a wrestling grandparent one day. But I love the sport. It's just so awesome. And so whenever I see a wrestler in the UFC, I'm in their corner, right? And it's become increasingly harder now because now you have wrestlers against wrestlers, right? So you have to pick, okay, well, I like that college better than I like the other college or whatever, whatever it is. But I always like to see the wrestlers succeed. And so I've been following your career for a long time, and even from Bellator, and then now you've gone to the UFC, and recently you're coming off something that just was unbelievable with the Tony Ferguson fight. Congratulations to you there. But one of the things that I've always wanted to talk to you about is mindset. Just you epitomize mindset and manifesting things, in my opinion. And I just really wanted to talk to you about that, because you're very vocal about it. You're very inspirational and motivational to other people, but it seems like, and I've even heard you say it on other podcasts, you're a small guy from a small town taught to do small things, and something has changed. Yeah. What's changed?
I think it's, I talk about the walk-on mentality. Like me, I believe foregoing the scholarships to Division II, Division III NAIA schools and walking on to the University of Missouri was the single best decision that I made in my entire athletic life, but it also spilled into every single other aspect of my life. I think knowing where you started, knowing that you're the lowest guy on the totem pole, we were talking about Brian Smith. I love Brian Smith and what he has done for University of Missouri, but to me, he was a godlike figure that first year when I came in, and for him to never look at me, speak to me, talk at me, look in my direction, say, good job, kid. Although it didn't offend me and I wasn't worth his time, I wanted to prove to him, not just to him, but to myself. I wanted to prove to all my friends in High Ridge, Missouri, Jefferson County, Missouri, that said, hey, why don't you go take this Division III scholarship? Why don't you go take that NAIA scholarship? If something in me, thank God, it went against the grain of what everybody thought I was capable of. I made that decision to walk on and know where I started. And now I sit here and I'm, multiple time Bellator world champion and top 5 in the UFC. And I do believe that it's the calling on my life that I will become that UFC champion in the next couple years, that I am commissioned and I am convicted every single day that I wake up that there is some kid out there in a small town somewhere who may not believe certain things about himself because of what his parents have put on top of him, the box that he has been put in by his peers, the self-fulfilling prophecies that he is constantly caught in, that I was caught in. I was a late bloomer, didn't have hair in my armpits till I was almost 19 years old, and like we were talking, I chose wrestling. Well, it wasn't like I chose wrestling. Wrestling chose me because I was 5 foot 5'0", 120 pounds. And there was no other sport that I was going to be able to play. So I think it comes from a deep conviction that there's so many young kids out there around the entire world that felt exactly like I did. And even more so feel even more insignificant that I felt and smaller than I felt. That I want them to see that if Michael Chandler, this small guy from a small town who was taught to do small things, can do things that where I'm at right now, then I've got to spread that message. I've got to make these people believe in themselves.
Nice. So you're wearing the walk-on shirt, walk-on hat. So what does that mean to you, walk-on?
I think, for me, it's like I said, it's the single cornerstone that I've built my entire life around. Making that decision to walk on to the University of Missouri, I think it's I had to do more than what was expected of me. I had to do more than what was asked of me. I had to answer the phone calls to the upperclassmen. I think of Tyron Woodley, who ended up, we all know he ended up becoming a UFC champion. Ben Askren, who ended up becoming, fighting in the UFC, multiple time world champion. These guys were like my big brothers, but I was the guy that they would call at, whatever time I would, as long as I didn't have to skip class, or if it was a class that I knew I could or could not skip, I would be there. I would be in the gym. I would be in the practice room, sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a day if I had to not only was I trying to get better physically, but I was trying to prove, hey, I'm here. I am a pawn in this system, and I'm going to be used as much as I possibly could. I would have been completely okay getting to the end of my college career and look at myself in the mirror and say, okay, maybe I wasn't a national champion, maybe I wasn't an All-American, but there was not one day that I did not push myself to the limit and make myself of service to this program.
Like Rudy.
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
But
yeah.
but you made it. I mean, you became the All-American. You did it. But it's that work ethic of that's why people love that movie, Rudy.
Yeah,
because that's what he did. He didn't. I mean, by all measure, he didn't deserve to be there until he did the work and did the work and did the work to be there. And it's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's getting glossed over in today's society as well, is that we've seen so many people gain so much success so quickly that our standard of what hard work is and what it takes to become successful has been continued to be diminished, continued to be watered down, continued to be seem like it's so much more easily attainable than it should be. And I'm a son of a carpenter and a son of a secretary, like I said, small town, High Ridge, Missouri. And when I walked onto that team, I said, I don't care if I reach my goals or not. I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to show up first. I'm going to leave late. I'm going to be of service, and I'm going to do more than what is required. I mean, I think that's the walk-on mentality. I think even to this day, people would say, well, you got this and you got this following, you got these zeros in your bank account, or you got this, you got the wife and you got the kids in the house. But to me, I'm still waking up every single day and the rent is due every single day. As you've heard it 1,000 times, success is never owned, it's rented, and that rent is due every single day. And that's just the mentality that I had. And it's a walk-on mentality. In mixed martial arts, we call it a white belt mentality, where even if you're a world champion, you still got the open mind and the open heart to serve and still be the white belt like you were the first day you walked into the gym with those starry eyes and a bright future.
You can learn from everybody.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to be in that situation and to do the work every single day. And in my opinion, there's a place where it's almost easier to find yourself there and just start churning out that work than it is to be the kid that has the opportunity to go to the smaller school or whatever, and then choose. And that's exactly what it is. It's a choice of, I'm taking this harder choice.
Yeah.
May not be successful, may not, I'm probably going to get laughed at. I'm not going to be welcome. I'm going to take this harder choice. Tell me about that. Like that's really where I see your career really starting, is at that choice of making that walk-on choice.
Yeah. And I really wish I do not do a good job of remembering things. Like I always say, when I write a book, like I'm going to make sure it'll be my brother, Eric, who seems to remember everything about our childhood and about us coming up together and all that. And, my wife over the last 10 years, because I don't remember these things, because I think I am so in the moment. I'm in the moment today, so I may not remember that much about today. And it's not because I fight and get hit in the head for a living. It's literally I think I'm in the moment, and I can't remember when I was that 17, 18-year-old kid why I made that decision. Why being a small guy from a small town, you can find yourself in the herd, in the middle of the herd where everybody's doing something. And this is kind of what we do. We're from High Ridge, Missouri. You're either going to get a job at Emo's Pizza, or you're going to be flipping tires over at Dobbs Tires, or you may be working on Chris Bonniger's farm. He had all this farmland and all these cows. And there was all these different things that, I fell into that herd mentality, and I always wanted to be a little bit vanilla because I never wanted to stand out. I never wanted to make people feel insecure about my confidence in myself. So I constantly diminished myself. So I have no idea why at that point in time, because you got to remember too, we're talking about scholarships. We're talking about, I'm a middle-class family. My mom and dad worked two and three jobs to make sure my son, or their sons, my two brothers and myself, had every single thing that we possibly needed. We had everything we needed. We had a roof over our head. We had food. We weren't poor by any means, but we were not well-to-do at all. So I was making a decision that said, Mom, we're going to take on a little bit of student loan debt here instead of I can go take this zero emission fees to a different school. And luckily my parents were on board with it, because I had this feeling in my heart that if I'm going to wrestle, I'm going to try to wrestle at the highest level. And even if I'm a bench warmer, even if I become a training partner for 5 years, even if I quit and I have to go back to High Ridge, Missouri with my hat in my hand and everybody's got their finger pointed at me and said, I told you so. That's where you want to be. You want to be in those moments. And now even as a guy who's now had 30 fights, you alluded to the Tony Ferguson fight. This is my 30th fight. That's a lot of professional fights. And, obviously I'm a veteran now of the sport, but even now I talk about this idea that even though you've sat in front of a TV, or I've sat in front of a TV, and we've watched somebody lose, we've watched them dare greatly and fail and fall flat on their face. And you have that feeling that, gosh, that's embarrassing for that person, or, ooh, I'm glad I'm not in that person's shoes. I truly believe that the human spirit gets unlocked a little bit in those moments where we can say, yes, I do feel sorry for him, but I'm kind of envious that man or that woman put themselves out there like that. And I've done that so many times now, and it's embarrassing when you lose in front of millions of people. And it was embarrassing when I wasn't an All-American up until finally my senior year, and I would go back between school years and still on the wrestling team. And I made the team this year, but I went, 20-16. I didn't exactly have a great record, but it's in those moments where people can say, yeah, the dude's not exactly successful, but I kind of wish I would trade places with him because I know what I'm doing. I wish I was putting myself out there a little bit more like that. And it's just
Forrest Gallante, Conservation Imbalance, episode 848.
So here you have a bunch of backwoods moonshiners hanging out in the woods, hearing these remote howls at nighttime, and they're going, oh, what's that? It must be this demonic howling creature. Then they're further perpetuating this myth to keep looky-loos and law enforcement out of their distilleries, out of their moonshining locations. And before you know it, you have an entire cryptid created, the Ozark Howler, which is all founded in reality and truth, which is this beautiful red wolf that is getting driven towards extinction. So you have to take every single one of these myths with some grain of truth and reality, because it's founded in something, and it's likely founded in some real animal. It's just about getting through the nonsense to figure out what is it. And that's why I like that example of the Ozark Howler, because it's this trifecta of things that created this cryptid. But the reality is the cryptid is just this beautiful, sleek little wolf that was being driven towards extinction, that was trying to find a mate.
But leave that to people's imagination. And it's like, shoot, I saw it and it was 12 feet tall and it made the craziest noise. And it was a tree. It was a tree on a hill,
Exactly.
And then they turned around and ran, and then they're like, it was right there. People go crazy with it. But
we see what we want to see, Tom. And I'll give you another good example if you don't mind. And I guarantee you, your listeners are going to get offended by this, and then you're going to have people writing in telling me I'm wrong. But it's the scientific truth. I'll tell you this: have you ever heard of black panthers in North America?
Oh yeah.
Ever seen one?
I have not seen a black panther.
Right, but you'll find thousands and thousands of people who tell you they have. Check this out: a panther, as you know, or a mountain lion, a cougar, a puma. There's never been a black one recorded in history. Doesn't exist. There is no such. Now, there are black leopards, there are black jaguars. Those are other animals. But everybody that's ever seen a black panther in North America has allegedly seen a melanistic mountain lion, puma, cougar. That doesn't exist. that animal, the puma, does not get melanism. Its coat does not turn black. So the human mind, from pop culture, like movies like Black Panther, from Black Panther mascots, from Black Panther books and reading and comics and everything else, we now see a panther in the Everglades, wherever it is, in the shadows, covered in mud, in the dark, at night, whatever, and our mind tells us that it's black.
Yes.
100%.
Because
because we're so influenced by the media around it. Now we've seen a panther. Oh, it's a black panther. It isn't. It's a beige mountain lion, but you have decided it's a black panther. And like I said, you're going to have people writing in going, this guy's full of shit. I swear to God, I saw a black panther.
Well,
maybe you did.
They will swear, right?
Yeah.
Like,
right.
But it was
exactly.
black to them, like what you're saying.
It was black to them. Exactly.
My buddy Dan Diaz just got a panther on camera. On his cell phone camera. And this is one of our cameramen. Like, he's got really good cameras and stuff, but he just happened to have his cell phone camera, and he captured a panther in the Everglades walking down, and it was not kind of what I thought. Like, I thought the Everglades is a place where you're going to have a panther that is, huge and big, and they have so much to eat and everything. And it was the skinniest little. I mean, it was probably an adolescent panther. Is what it looks like, but it was skinny and very small. I mean, I think it was smaller than a Labrador Retriever. But
that's about right.
Yeah, it was. Still, you wouldn't want to mess with the thing.
No.
So
God,
as
no.
we're talking about wolves and stuff, what do you think about the recent Colorado wolf reintroduction?
You know, I just saw the news yesterday. I think that whole thing is very interesting, the whole wolf reintroduction. First of all, I think wolves should be in their historic range. I want to be clear on my standpoint on that. Not everywhere. Obviously, we don't need wolves in downtown Denver, right? But wolves should typically be in their historic range because they're a keystone species, which mean they manage prey populations, which affect riparian habitats and grasslands and everything else. So wolves should be in their historic range where they were before. If, and this is a big if, this is important, if the ecosystem can manage that, meaning there is enough prey sources, there is the right amount. Also, the abundance of wolves needs to be regulated, right? You can't just put 500 wolves in and go, perfect, we fixed it. No, because now you're going to have a predator-prey equation where you're going to crash the ungulate population, the elk and deer population, blah, 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 right? So it's just a delicate balance where everything needs to be managed. I just read about the Colorado wolf reintroduction. Something I read said that it's it's a subspecies or it's not a gray wolf, blah, blah, blah. I need to look more closely into that, so I don't want to comment on that because I'm not sure what the correct subspecies.
I haven't read that part.
Yeah,
so I saw the picture of the first one going out, and it was black, and it looked big, like a wolf I've seen in Yellowstone. I mean, it looked like a real wolf. I don't know, subspecies or whatever. It looked big.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of controversy there. But at least they have something to go on with the reintroduction of the wolves in Yellowstone.
Right.
You know, like how long did it take for them to reach a certain density, and how many are in a pack, and how many packs are there now? And there's some of the most interesting animals. Some of those books that have been written about the wolves in Yellowstone are so cool, man. These people will just watch them and watch them and watch them, and with the radio, and then they'll take the radio collar information that's available, and they'll know that this one went over to the other pack, and then challenged this, and there are these wolf books that are written about the wolves in Yellowstone that it's like a soap opera,
right? Like
of things that are going on, and the way that this one wolf challenges the other ones, and this particular wolf like always eats last and makes sure that they make the kill, but then they always eat last, and people are observing this for years, and
it's fascinating.
It's fascinating, like the communication that the wolves have and all that. So I like wolves as a species. I know that ranchers don't particularly like them.
Yeah.
And that's where some of the a tremendous amount of this controversy is coming in Colorado, but in Yellowstone, or in Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, you have this Yellowstone, where this is the largest national park that we have. Okay. Are they going to get out of there? Probably. That's what everybody said, and they did. But, there's a tremendous amount of habitat and land for them to be in that is a national park. In Colorado, don't know. Don't know what that's going to look like.
Yep. Well, it goes back to, it's similar. First of all, we fear what we don't know. That's a human instinct, right? These ranchers, these hunters, everybody that hates the wolves, and on both sides of the coin, by the way, but everybody that's really anti-wolf reintroduction doesn't know them. They're scared of them because they don't know them. They think they do. They've read about them. They know they're going to kill their elk. They know they're going to kill their sheep on their farm, their cattle, whatever. You don't actually know them. So you're scared of them because of their legend and their rumor. You don't know them. And the truth is, we live in a time and place on this planet where every bit of wildlife has to be managed now, especially in North America, not globally, but in North America. So we have to manage how many wolves are going in, what areas they're going into, how that's going to affect things. We might have overpopulations of wolves, in which case we'll have to shoot some and bring them down. We might have underpopulations, in which case we're going to need to add more. We need to do our very best as docents of this planet to balance these ecosystems. Just because you love shooting mule deer or whatever, whitetail deer, and you can go out in, some of these Midwestern states and see hundreds or thousands of deer, that's awesome, but that doesn't mean that it's a good balance for the ecosystem, right? That's creating its own set of problems. I get that hunters love it. I get that hunters are there to bring those deer numbers down and all of that, but there's still problems in that ecosystem, right? And bringing in a keystone species, which means an animal that can actually have a cascading effect through the food chain, that's what's going to regulate those problems.
Michael Waddell, The Bone Collector, episode 426.
I tell you something else I learned too about the outdoor space and doing what I've done. Like I said, I didn't go to college, and I remember my dad was one of the only people that was 100% for when I was 17, 18. Like, all right, you ain't going to school. Well, if you're going to be helping out Bill Jordan guiding, well, ride that out and get after it. That's a pretty cool opportunity. But my dad was a very big avid outdoorsman, and he loved Realtree and the Mossy Oak, and he was a fan of a lot of these companies I was having a chance to work with early on. But overall, I would say my family, which is all country as a chicken coop, they was discouraging of it. They were like, well, Michael, you can't make a living hunting. This is ridiculous. You done gone crazy. Man, you need, I had went to heating and air school. So I had gotten a degree in air conditioning technology, and I just gotten a job as well, just out of high school, being a serviceman, like a serviceman for heating and air, installing air conditioners. A lot of people don't realize that. Well, my grandmom and my uncle were devastated. Like, you got a van, you got a suit with your name on it. I know, but I'm not fulfilled. I'm completely fine. I'll do this the rest of my life, but I'm also 17, 18, 19 years of age. I think I should try this. I'm sitting here trying to talk adults who love me into pushing them to realize that I think I should try this opportunity. No different than the kid who wants to go to Nashville to be a singer,
right?
Or the kid like you that went from Chattanooga said, I think I'm going to start guiding fish out west. You ain't fished those rivers out west outside of just for hobby. Yeah,
never.
But like now I'm gonna go out here and start guiding. Right. Okay. And so I was kind of in the same boat. And so I realize now that I look back, and it saddens me. And that's one reason I'm glad we're talking about this stuff. If there's a man or woman listening or watching this podcast, and you've always wanted to do something, go for it, but go for it with everything in you and have the confidence that you can be great in it. Because the reason I say that, I started realizing that a lot of my friends and even my family, they are just living this slow, conservative, safe route to death. And that's pretty bold of me to say that, but they're not taking any chances. And I have learned that you do fail a lot, but if you keep getting back up and swinging, you succeed. And so with this in America, there's so many ways. I mean, there's got to be a Jay-Z. There's got to be a Beyonce. Yeah. There's got to be a Tom Rowland. There's got to be a Michael Jordan. There's got to be a Chuck Adams. There's got to be a Dale Earnhardt. Who in some of these areas that we have a chance to play in could think that there would be a livelihood. I'm not saying that's easy, but it's not wrong for Americans or anybody or human being to go after being into this 10% or 20%. And I think what happens is most of the people who love us the most, I catch myself as a parent now doing it, we try to push into this safe zone of this 80, 90% of making a livelihood, working at a high rise or being in the agency rather than to push to own the agency. And so in a deep way, I think that's the problem with America. Now we get into the point where people don't even want to work. They just want to sit at home and just get something given to them. And so I think the American dream's still alive, but it's only alive if you dream and you have the balls. I know that I guess I can say it on this podcast to just go get after it, to go get after it. And if you fail, you can still jump back into that 80 percentile.
Well, you can
still.
You can, but you're crazy to think that you're going to do anything, whether you're living the most conservative, slow walk to death, like you said. I mean, said it a little differently, but whether you're doing that or whether you're trying to be the next big country music star or the next Michael Waddell, whatever it is, you're going to fail. You're going to fail conservatively or you're going to fail swinging for the fence. It's how you how you react to that failure, and whether you learn from those mistakes and move on, or whether you fail and go, man, well, that wasn't for me anyway, and go back. Like, that's the difference. And like, we talk about these things on this podcast all the time because I'm so fascinated with these moments in people's career, whether that's like I said, Bill Dance or Roland Martin or Jimmy Houston. All of them have had this to where they get to this point in their career, and I know I did, to where it's like, do I really go for it here, or do I just kind of not, and it's like, it would be easy to not do it. And I mean, it would be easy to do it, but it would be easier not to do it. And then you have this burn the boat moment to where you just jump and you just say, man, I'm going to do this. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be the best at it that I can possibly be. And if I fail, I'm going to have no regrets. And I think that living that way is powerful. And I can tell that you've done that in your career. And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to you, because you've obviously done that. And I was trying to get to that moment of like, like you said, you have a fear of failure, but there's also such thing as a fear of success, where all your friends are like, oh, Hollywood, look who's here, and man, that kills people, man. That kills people. It sucks the motivation right out of them. And they're like, man, I thought this big break, I thought I won this big tournament and that was going to be great, but all my friends are like, they don't want to be around me anymore. And coming to grips with that. Coming to grips with that and moving forward and past that, that's hard. That really is, man. Brother, it's hard.
You speak in my story now, because that
sounds like we got really similar story, man. Really, it's funny.
Similar. And
I just wish I had made it as big as Michael Waddell.
No, man, you have. That's like, I can't wait to talk about some of the things. I mean, even the waypoint. I mean, my God, I'm so proud of what y'all are doing and where this thing can go. I mean, I know we still got to talk about that, but as you're saying, did you find this, Tom? And it's ironic. You're talking about people that I admire, like the Bill Dance, the Roland Martins, and I mean, you don't even realize that all those guys, and I talk about people in the hunting industry, and I've become friends with a lot of people, without having a name drop, but like the Blake Sheltons and like the, Red Akins and all these guys, man, we've been friends a long time. And I can't tell you, they've all been in a place in their career where it was kind of over, or call it depression. That's kind of a big kind of, maybe not fair to say that, but you get into a place to where I'm going for it. I'm either going to sink or I'm going to swim. And it seems like, Tom, is that where it seemed like always something turned for you?
It seems like it. I mean, it doesn't happen right away. It's not like you say, I'm going for it, and then tomorrow you're like, I sure am glad I did. No, it's like a couple of years from there. You always hear the expression, he's an overnight success, 20 years in the making. And that's how it happens. It's like all of a sudden people are like, where'd this guy come from, man? Wow. And then you dig into it a little bit and it's like, oh, well, he's been doing this for 30 years. Like, whether it's the big country star or the rock and roll star or the whatever, a lot of them, like, they've been doing this for a long time. They've been like, there's a book I like called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And that's what it's about. It's like every day you chop wood, you carry water, you do the basics and you keep going. No matter what, you keep going and keep trying and keep going. And sooner or later, things are going to start happening. But it does seem like you can get to a point to where you decide, I think that's too risky, or that's just not for me. And it is that moment that is either it's going to take you where you want to go or not. Your choice. Yeah. And sometimes it's a good choice to go back the other way for some people. But
I agree.
Not if not if you got a burning desire in your heart to make it as a professional hunter like you or a professional fisherman like me. It's like you got to go.
And it's not easy. And like I said, sometimes you definitely, it's, I'm always talking sports analogies because I understand sports and always grew up playing it. And obviously sports give you a certain mental and physical toughness that help you kind of make some of this stuff easy when it comes to business and figuring out how to make decisions. But, sometimes you swing for a single, that, man, if I can get enough singles, like you said, the chopped wood carry water. And then there's times to where, like, look, it's time. I'm waiting for the fastball down the middle, and hell with it, I'm gonna freaking hit it up into the upper deck. And it's funny because even looking back on my career, there was 2 pivotal times that I remember, Tom, and I never really even said this. I was completely ready to be done with it all. And from a public standpoint, people might have thought that, man, Waddell's rocking, man, he's at the top of his game. But one was coming off Realtree road trips, coming off a full-time employment at Realtree and trying to sort this out and kind of somewhat figure out my path. And Realtree didn't know what to do and didn't know how to really reward me. And they didn't know how to let me take advantage of some of these opportunities. So I was in a process of kind of having to leave. But I remember being so depressed and kind of disgusted. I was going through a really tough time. I wasn't seeing my kids. I was killing everything. I was not making any money. I was not making good money because I was just working as a full-time guy, but I was working every weekend at every Bass Pro Shops, every Cabela's, every Gander Mountain, every store out there. I was going for promotions for, Outdoor Channel. I was going promotions, for all these companies. And really at the end of it, all I had was some, new boots and a new bow and no money. And my marriage had failed, and my kids are like, and your name is Daddy. And I remember thinking, bullshit, I'm done. I'm over this. I'm either going to figure out a way to handle some of these situations. And at that time, I would say selfishly, I was thinking, I'm either going to make some money at this, or I'm going back and going to work in construction with my dad. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm going for it. I'm going to go big, hard. And if it don't make it, then I'm completely fine. And I can say that my life's been good. And then soon after I did that, quickly, man, we found great success, both financially and being independent. And then, I went through some tough business times, but then soon after that, I go through a very bad divorce. And I remember once again, I was in a place in my life, personally, I was thinking, nope, I'm going to make these changes in my life and it's going to take me into where I need to be. And if it don't, and I have to leave this behind, I will. And holy cow, it turned into something great. And so with that, I've just learned that is part of being a man or a woman. And you just learn that you can let the fear of failure drive you, but you also can learn to live with failure, knowing that you at least did try. And I think the biggest nightmare I would have, if I look back, my biggest regret would be I didn't change anything and I didn't go for anything. That would be more depressing than to fail, than to not have at least tried to get up to the plate, for sure.
I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Like that fear. There's a fear for me of living with regret these days. And as I get a little bit older too, I realize I see it with people. They're like, man, I could have done something like that. And you think, man, that would be a rough way to wake up every morning, like knowing that you could have, but you didn't. And then living for the rest of your life, like just saying that all the time, like I could have done that. Like in Napoleon Dynamite, like, man, if the coach had put me in there, I'd have thrown that football over that mountain, We'd have won the state for sure, like that guy, he's living with that all the time. And that's the advice that I give to people too, because for whatever reason, I guess I'm sure a lot of people ask you the advice too. Like, how did you do this? What would you tell me to do? And it's like, man, just go for it. Go for it. And
just go for it.
Especially if you're young, man. If you're young, what's the worst that's going to happen? You decide it's not for me, or you decide, well, I thought it was going to be a little bit better, or whatever. But I do know people that came to the Florida Keys and they tried guiding for a while, and they might have guided for 4 or 5 years, and then they leave. Yeah. And they're fine with it. They're leaving on their own terms. They decided that, you know what, this was great. I went for it. I competed with what I see are the best fishing guides on the planet, and I was one of them. And I did this.
John Savage, rogue wave survivor and author of Lost in the Stream, episode 723.
We want to get a good early start, so get underway at 5 o'clock. So and idling on out there so we could go ahead and push up when we were in the main channel, and that's what we did. Eric pushed her up. Beautiful ride, just absolutely gorgeous. Following the sea, 2 to 3 foot, big rollers. Couldn't ask for a prettier ride. Hardly even 10 knots of wind, and we were going along, and all of a sudden we heard. This is when we were up and running. I also heard bam, like bam, like what in the world was that? And for some reason, so that boat, the way the refrigerator was set up, when it would rock, the refrigerator sometimes would open up and everything would come flying on the floor. So a lot of times on that boat we were running, I would like go down there and I would like lay down and take a nap up against the refrigerator, keep that rascal closed, so we wouldn't have to chase the mayonnaise everywhere. And we heard that bamming. So I went downstairs and I saw, so on some sport fish, you'll see that they have the double doors that are in the middle. Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes how they function is there's a track above, kind of like a barn doors that people have in their houses now. But the thing about it is it's a boat. So boats rock and they'd be slamming if you didn't have a system there. So basically there would be a cable that goes around there, and that cable's pinched so that the doors, no matter where they are, they counterbalance each other as the boat rocks. And one of those pulleys had come, the tightener had come loose on it. So I told Eric, I said, pull it back all the way. So, he had an idle and I fixed it, and all happy he was working good. So I climbed up on the bridge. And so when you would go onto the bridge of that boat, it had a tower on it as well. So a lot of times when people see a sport fish vessel, they'll see like a full enclosure of curtains. Mm-hmm. Some of those Florida boats back then didn't have that. They just had like you would see on a center console, a curtain, a straight up and down curtain right in front of the console. That's what it had. And the passage went to the right or to the starboard side to get around to the bench in the front. So that's where I was standing. And no problem, Eric. Got it fixed. I'll get some Loctite on it when we get there. So he was in the process of pushing the throttles up. And we were just kind of like looking at each other, just talking about that, laughing, joking. And then look forward to see something like, Tom, I've never seen anything like it before in my life. Fished a lot of days and never seen anything like this. And like I said, a 2 to 3 foot following sea. Jim Smiths are pretty good boats in the following sea. And we've all like been in situations before, even with a flats boat where, where you kind of come off and you stuff a little bit, maybe. It wasn't really it wasn't that kind of situation. It was like I don't see how a wave could be so steep without breaking. That's one of the things that's haunted me over the years. And writing the book has given me some help with that. But when she went off of it and she fell, when she came down the face of that wave, it was a sharp enough angle that I free fell forward. And as I was falling forward, I was able to grab hold of one of the tuna tower legs and then a little rail that went across the front of the brow and grab hold of that to keep from going any further. And of course, Eric, at the wheel, he had pulled her out. I mean, we weren't up to speed, but he had the good, he was able to get her out of gear real quick as she was going down that wave. And when she hit the bottom, it was just the most god awful. I mean, hearing the bulkheads breaking inside.
Wow.
And as I remember ducking down up in that corner, I remember starting to see a crack come from just like where the cabin meets the front deck and the house meets the front deck. It was probably just a little ways, a couple feet in front of that, starting on the starboard side and running across to the port.
Wow.
And I was expecting I still, even though I saw what I saw and heard what I heard, I was still, and I got hit by water so I don't know where the water came from that hit me, but I was expecting to still feel her ride up, but then she just stopped and she just kept going.
Oh man.
And that's when, from the perspective of where Eric was at the helm, he couldn't really see the bow deck like that. Mm-hmm. Of what was going on down there. So then that's when I turned right around to him and I said, "Oh my God, she's going down."
Wow.
And the moment I did that, Eric went just like this, reached to his left to the console box to where our radios were. And they were already dead. So that shows what kind of implosion that happened within that vessel. Wow. And that's nothing against Jim. I don't know what boat I've never seen a force like that. I don't know what boat could have survived that wave.
So I read this in your book and I was trying to visualize what it was looking like. So a couple of times, many times you talk about going down the face of this wave. So was the wave in front of you coming towards you like this, or coming from behind you?
It was like a hole is a better way to describe it.
It's like a hole in the ocean.
We may have been climbing, I don't know, but it wasn't like there a big wave in front of us. Like we went up and the RPMs went down and all that.
Right.
It was like, no, it was just like driving off a cliff.
Dropped off a cliff.
And I don't know. I can't tell you how big the wave was, because, as I was falling, I mean, obviously it was a 56 footer and the whole thing kind of fell down into it. And I can't tell you how long it was, because my focus was forward, and so was Eric's forward at the time.
Yeah, it's really a weird thing, because all of us have been offshore a lot, never seen anything like this, and those boats, like a big sport fish boat, that's a big durable boat, and for it to, I don't know. I was just trying, when I was reading the book, I'm just trying to visualize like how in the world that could happen. And then you even have a chapter in here about you kind of trying to figure out how in the world it could happen, what it was. And like, do you have any other ideas of what it was? Like, could that have been caused by like some kind of a tectonic shift or an earthquake or some kind of volcano, or like what would cause something like that to happen? And it could be a one in 2,000, 10,000 year kind of thing, right?
And I wish I had the answer, because that would bring so much closure. Mm-hmm. But the way I kind of look at it, Tom, is this: that I don't know what caused it. It doesn't matter what caused it, because the good that's come out of what out of that wave. That's where like you said, with the research, when I read that and realized that they didn't have the first rogue wave recorded until 1995, 1996 on that Drepner oil rig, when that wave passed by, because prior to that, it was always, mechanical issues, operator error, because it didn't fit within that equation that they had, the logarithmic equation they had for what a wave could be. It was outside of that box.
Right.
And I watched a number of documentaries about it, and that really brought me a lot of healing. Realizing that, hey, this thing that you saw out there isn't what you were taught a wave was, because they didn't even know this existed when you were in school.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. You actually talk about it in your book about that, the thing that you just referenced there, that certain tower that it recorded. Tell me more about that. What was going on with that tower where they recorded this rogue wave that you just referenced? I'm looking for it in your book right now. I'm not.
Yeah, so it would be probably 2/3 of the way back. But yeah, so what it was is it just happened to be an oil rig up in the North Sea, and it actually had sensors on it. And even if you were to like doing the research, I went back to look at buoys. There were hardly any buoys in that lower Gulf region back then to have data. So looking through it, and again, they talked about that logarithmic equation, which a wave could only reach at a certain height. And then there was, to have anything outside of that, it was a 1 in 10,000 year event. So after that wave was hit, what it did is it threw the marine architecture world upside down. And because here's this thing out here. And then the insurance companies were like, "Oh man, so we have these ships that are out there," because I know that I'd even heard of ships that would get stretched out on a rogue wave, hanging in the middle, break and sink, and usually there's no survivors. And so I could see how this could do that.
Wow. So
with that, then what they did is they took satellites and I guess it was in that close to that time frame when it happened to us, and they just went pass after pass after pass, scanning the surface of the ocean, looking to see if, all right, so this thing that hit this oil rig, are there any more of them out there? When they got the data back, they were blown away how many more rogue waves there were out there.
Really?
By definition, I don't think really this was kind of an extreme wave, because it was so much larger than anything around it. So that's why I think kind of where you were going with maybe like a plates thing happened or something happened on the bottom, because at the point where you went down it was close to 1,000 fathoms. So it's, and it kind of, there is shelves that come up. So something could have happened down there and it pulled. I don't know for sure. So even with that data that they received from those satellites, they even were looking at changing, restricting shipping routes to keep the ships
Really?
out of those areas where they were seeing more of the waves.
It's worth noting that this is only 90 miles off Key West, right? This area that we're talking about, 90 miles southwest or west southwest.
Yes, sir.
And
closer to Cuba than to
yeah, but man,
US.
I mean, that's not that far away from where center consoles are going.
No.
A lot on a daily basis from Key West, right? I mean, like, you know, if you're going to the fort, that's 75 miles away, and people go beyond the fort a bunch. And I mean, so what we're talking about isn't like some kind of crazy absolute middle of the ocean kind of thing. This is where it's where people are going on a routine basis for the most part.
Yep. And I think, you know, we were in the Gulf Stream and we were in the deep water, but still, I mean, that thing's going to hit. It's going to come up to shallow water at some point in time. And how far are you going to be from that? I mean, even down there, because you're so close to the edge, especially when you're fishing, more on that southeastern side, you're right there at it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened. I don't know where this thing hit. I don't know what happened beyond it being with us. I did hear somebody say a story of, and I couldn't find the research on it, but I did hear something about close to then a rogue wave hitting somewhere down in the Keys. So maybe there was something else that happened that was related to the situation.
But it wasn't like, you know, Duval Street was covered in 8 feet of water or anything like that. Like this. I mean, I was living in Key West at that point, and it wasn't. I mean, you know, no, you would know about that. Like that, I don't remember anything about that happening. But the point being is that is a weird thing to happen, and it happened to you, and so. And obviously, your book goes into far greater detail than we're going to go on this podcast this time. But so you go down, right? Like and so this happens from the time you fix that door on the salon to when you're down. What are we looking at as far as the time?
It was this quick. So when I turned around to Eric and like, oh my gosh, he's going down. He's like, get the life jackets, buddy. So what had we done? We had packed tents. We packed all of our stuff on top of the life jackets because this is a daytime crossing. Our E-Perb life raft were inside the salon, which is common. You know, hey, we're ready. We got it in the side of the salons. We had that discussion that morning. Is should we take the E-Perb life raft out and put it in the cockpit? No, nothing ever happens during the daytime because we're always so scared of running at night. And that's where that was. And all right, buddy, get the life jacket. So I go around the front. I start pulling stuff out to try to get, and I just can't get that tent. I guess, you know, maybe things had shifted or whatever, and it's not coming out. And then I look and I see that quickly within a minute or 2 minutes, the water is getting close to the level of the house. Because when she went down, she listed over to her port side bow down. And the water was all the way to the top. Now, before we left, I just seen the movie Titanic. So I'm like, man, this is the only one that's sucking me. So I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I knew that I had to abandon because I didn't have time to get the life jackets. I was like, man, I hope Eric was able to get in there and get the E-Perb life raft. And so I stepped from the bridge cap down to the water. And from there, I swam, I kind of swam around to the cockpit. When I got around to the cockpit, I looked and I saw Eric. He was up inside in the cockpit, up like in the sheer where the door is, and he was just punching the door as hard as he could with his fist. So those panes of glass in those doors are kind of small, so they're pretty strong. And what had happened is, as she buckled, those double doors were locked shut by the pressure of the twisted boat.
Do you ever think about what if you hadn't fixed that door? Like you know, that one door was kind of broken. Man. Like
we'd been running.
You'd been running, and you would have been running and hit the wave, right? We'd
have been going, close to 30 knots and gone into. I couldn't. I had never thought about that till I was writing the book, and when it hit me, I'm like, oh dear Lord, thank you so much for that door being messed up. Because could you imagine what it would have been like that impact?
Well, no. I mean, it's really just honestly, it's hard to imagine.
Ray Cash Care, former Navy SEAL and lead instructor of the MDK Project, episode 600.
And what I try to instill is that you can be really freaking good at making a lot of money or being really great at one thing, but being successful at learning things in life is like fitness. It has to be 3-dimensional, right? Physical fitness is also physical, mental, and emotional fitness. So in order to be successful, you have to be able to find balance in your battlefield, business field, and home field of life. And what I do whenever I'm teaching is I just take what I've learned from the battlefield. And when I say from the battlefield, I'm talking overseas, I'm talking as a child, I'm talking about as a husband, as a father. And all I do is I try to, whoever my audience is, the key is to be able to make it resonate to them, right? Like, so if I'm talking to corporate lawyers, throwing a whole bunch of acronyms around about, SEAL teams and doing this, and you have to be able to explain what you're doing to make it resonate with people. So what I expect from my teachings from people is, number one, I want to make sure that whoever my audience is, it's hitting home. So I try to keep it very universal, right? Number two, I try to make sure that individuals understand that it's more than just being one-dimensional, right? A lot of people, they define success from a monetary standpoint. No, you need to 3-dimensional again. Strategize, prioritize, monetize, right? It's everything's in 3s or 4s. And the minute that you understand that and you slow it down, decision-making, ask, make, take, right? Everything you have to just break down into little segments, right? And then what I do is there are times when I will have overlapping fields of fire, like my morals, my values, they all cross over into my inner, my work and, my personal. But then there's other things where you have to compartmentalize, which means I keep that here, I keep this here, and I keep that there. Case in point, let's use Bert, right? Bert and I were on the TV show, The Selection, together. Him and I had a discussion, I guess, if you will, about something that we weren't agreeing on. Obviously, anything with Bert is pretty passionate. We went off to the side. We had a heated discussion about it. We compartmentalized it there. We came back on set. It was professional, right? Most people cannot compartmentalize something and they'll bring that over. And then it has what I call the domino effect of crap. And they're going to start taking things personal. What the only thing I take personal in my life is if someone comes at my family. Other than that, it's business. And I tell people, becoming a better human being is a business. And that's what my business is I try to make human beings better. Like I said, whether it's one word at a time, one push-up at a time, one motivational speak at a time, everything is one step in front of the other. So my message is simply this. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that your message and my message can resonate with you. And I love when I'm speaking, I speak to hundreds and thousands of people. And I'll ask somebody, if you don't understand what I'm saying, raise your hand and ask me. Don't be the kid in left field chewing on the glove and the ball's hit, right? And you're behind it. Don't be that guy. And I try to use a lot of symbolism when I'm trying to teach things, so it resonates with people. And from kids, I teach kids. I have a father-son course. I teach successful entrepreneurs, and I do business coaching and training. In order to be a great leader, you must lead, listen, and learn. And you need to understand what it is and who it is you're leading, because when you're teaching people things or they're taking your advice, all that is an example of your leadership. People listen to you because you're a solid leader. So, some of the names you named, like Tyler and Bert and Mark Devine, holy crap. I mean, the guy's a god. He's a god in our business. You said kind of a fake Navy SEAL thing. His courses are no joke. We run a similar course. He's a very intellectual man, very physical man, very spiritual man, very well-rounded, obviously, lieutenant commander in the SEAL teams. Just another guy that you can't say a bad thing about and you have nothing but the utmost respect for. Right. As a human, as a Navy SEAL, as a husband, every avenue of a man, he's pretty much dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And Mr. Devine, if you hear me, sir, I know you didn't tell me to say that, but I respect the hell out of you. Yeah. And that's how you get the message.
I learned a lot from him. Let's talk about leadership for a minute. Like you have the 3 L's of leadership. Let's talk about what that means to you. What are those 3 L's? You just said them real quick there.
Yeah. So in order to be a leader, you must lead, listen, and learn. And then I break it down even farther. Leaders lead. They lead themselves. They can lead from the front or the back, and they lead always. Right? Leaders lead. They're not led. Like, even if I'm letting someone else lead, I'm leading. In some fashion, I'm leading. Number two, we listen. The difference between listening and hearing is simply this. When you are hearing something, you're just waiting for your chance to talk. When you're listening, you're actually absorbing information. When you're listening to somebody, eye contact is established. It's like that handshake. There's no other place on earth you'd rather be. And I've learned a lot of valuable lessons about listening. When I'm listening to my superiors or peers or mentors, I used to be guilty of text messaging doing this when people would think I'm not paying attention to them. But it wasn't until a few years ago when I was doing that, and my boss, Bedros Keuilian, as he's talking to me about business, and he's, the man of business, I'm texting, he rips the phone out of my hand. I'm like, what the hell? And he goes, Ray, you have this button on your phone called voice memo. And when you hit voice memo, all I have is messages. So what I do is, as a leader, even if someone else is leading, I'm leading myself. I'm recording those messages and I make them audiobooks. I have like 100 of them. And instead of listening to the radio, I listen to people who have been there and done that. So you have the lead, you have the listen. I'm not hearing people. And next is learn. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you are in the game. There is always someone or something out there that has a different perspective that you can add to the tool bag. Now, as a leader, right, it's all about, we say, time management or guarding your time. One thing I've learned as a leader is you're always going to have eager beavers that always want to reach out and tell you things. There's a time and a place for it, and you have to establish that. But I will listen to each and every one of my team members. I don't believe in employees, team suggestions. Now, as a leader, you take that knowledge in, and if it's something, and I always try to, if I don't agree with it, start with the negative and with the positive. Like if you said, hey, let's do this, and say, listen, Tom, that's a great idea, but let me tell you why we're not doing that. But I really appreciate you taking the initiative to step up and come to me with that. That's great. And then you always end it with this. And I don't want you to ever stop. Don't be deterred by this, right? Because there's other leaders, right, that lead, listen, and I say they lose. And I'll get into that, where they just dismiss people. I don't have time, right? That person, gosh, only knows the courage that it took them to come up and talk to somebody at this level. Only who knows the ramifications of that. So listen and absorb like a sponge, right? And I like lead, listen, and learn from other people, right? Learn. Because here's what I tell people: as a leader, you only do two things in this life. You win or you lose. It's not true. You only win and you learn. I wanted to see, I saw your face. You only lose if you quit. And quitting means quitting on yourself, quitting on your team, quitting on the objective. Learning is, how many times, right? When you first started off fishing, how many mistakes did you make, right?
All the time.
Of course you did. I made mistakes all the time. Right? I've made mistakes as a father, as a husband, as a businessman, but as long as you can come back and have what we call an AAR, after action report, with yourself and with others from your team, and you can learn from your mistakes. I've made mistakes that have cost Bedros $15,000, $20,000. I'm not going to make those mistakes again, right? And it's all about that. So if you want to be a solid leader, the 3 L's are lead, don't be led, right? Don't just sit there and say, what's next? What's next? Take some initiative is what I'm saying, starting with yourself. And you cannot lead others until you lead yourself. Listen. Everybody has something to say. Everybody has a voice. You have to figure out whose voice is positive and negative. The positive, obviously, you want. The negative, you're going to have to figure that out as a leader, what you're going to do. Don't just hear people. Hearing is simply waiting to get your voice in there. And when you're just listening, or when you're hearing, you're not absorbing. You're just waiting. So you might not get the full intention of the message. You spurt something out and literally it goes against exactly what the leader was just saying. And last is, you listen and you learn. Don't lose, because you don't quit. Don't quit on yourself. Don't quit on your team. Don't quit on others, right? Because would you want, and just because it may have happened to you like it happened to me, you can stop that cycle, right? Just because I had a lot of negative shit in my life doesn't mean I need to be a negative person. I honestly feel that I am the author of my book. This is my vessel, and I am going to create the best version of me I can, both physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, spiritually, and financially, because that's what growth is. It's 6 forms of creating greatness. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to continue to do. Like I told you, I'm 50 years, 49 3/4 years young. And I'm just getting started, man. That's my mindset. A lot of people are like, oh, you're going downhill now. No, I'm not.
Man.
I'm going to find another hill.
Yeah.
It's going to get, and I love running up those hills, man, because my legs, even though they get sore, I get stronger. As I get to altitude, the symbolism, I acclimate, I get stronger, right? So, and then I run up the hill. I call attack the hill. That's what I do in everything in life. I run up the hill and I walk down the hill. I control the descent and I control the ascent versus you see a hill. What do most people do? They go, shit, right? They actually do that. They go, shit. They walk up the hill and then they run down the hill. Running down a hill, what happens if you go too fast? Eventually, you're going to go ass over tea kettle because you're allowing gravity, which I use as the symbolism of negative entities, to control who you are. You have to control yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
You know,
I am a master of control.
I've heard you go through that before about attacking the hill. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, like, when you're talking about controlling the descent, like, give me an example of that, because everybody understands attacking the hill. You have a goal, you have a something that you're trying to accomplish. You have something, you know, whether it's in business or personal life or whatever, you attack that hill. That's an easy thing to understand. But what it's a little bit not as clear to me anyway is when you're talking about you control the descent. So you attack that hill, you make it to the top. What is the descent for you? Like, where are you being controlling on the descent? What
I do is like I said, I have my little Black Rifle coffee cup here, and it's got some water in it, right? And first, I'm going to give you what the symbolism of is, and I'll break it down. By attack the hill, what I simply mean is you need to reverse engineer things, right? Case in point, most people hate Mondays. I love Mondays. Most people hate doing pull-ups. I love fucking doing pull-ups. Pardon my language. People hate doing burpees. I love doing burpees.
There's another thing we have in common. The
reason why people hate doing things is because it's hard. But if you learn how to control the hard and master the hard, you're going to build up stamina and speed, and it's going to get easier. Case in point, I can go to the biggest meathead gym on the planet, 5'7", 205. I can go underneath of a pull-up bar and start doing 15 or 20 burpee pull-ups. I'll have the biggest meatheads get away and go, dude, you take it. Because they can't do that, because what I'm doing is I'm conditioning myself for the fight. That's what I do. So most people in life, the hill, when they see an obstacle or something that's going to get in their way, they pace themselves going up. They get to the top and they think they've accomplished a whole lot. And then what they do is they run down the hill. My thing is run up the hill, attack it as fast as you can to accomplish your goal. Take a breath, situational awareness, 360-degree bubble, check my situations. I'm looking for another fight. The rest is on the descent. The rest isn't on the ascent. If I'm trying to improve myself, if I have a goal, I want to get there as fast and efficient as I can. When I'm walking down the hill, I'm not just resting. What I'm doing is that is the symbolism of me controlling the situation. If you run down a hill, you lose your situational awareness.
BlacktipH, YouTube fishing sensation, Joshua Jorgensen, episode 17.
But you know what? Like, I think at the same time, like, that's one of the reasons why I felt such an urge to get married is, like, I was fishing 5-6 days a week nonstop and wasn't guiding. I was just fishing. Got boring, man. Like, you just, cause you're catching all these fish, but at the same time, you're like, it's funny. We're never satisfied. The book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible says the eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. So no matter how much we have, no matter how much we see, it's all scalable. Like, you think, oh man, if I made $100 million, I would never work another day in my life. But then you get to the $100 million club, you're like, dude, that yacht cost $200 million.
Yeah.
I want one. Now you got to make $1 billion. It's like,
I think that's a trap that people fall into of, if I can get here, then I'm going to be happy. If I can get here, then I'm going to be happy. I think the path to happiness is being happy on the way to whatever it is that you're doing. Right?
It is. I mean,
like every day, That's what makes you happy. It's the process. And it goes back to fitness. That's the way to get in shape, is not that when I get a six pack, I want to be satisfied and then I'm going to lose it all again. It's like, no, I want to find something that I can enjoy all the way through, that is sustainable and enhances my life. Same thing with success or happiness or whatever. It's like you have to be happy on the way.
Yeah, if you're not happy on the way, you're wasting your time because the passion's not there. You're doing it for the wrong motives, you know. And like going back to, you know, the what were we talking about the 90-foot boat? You totally distracted me because like that's like a fantasy.
And where are you heading?
Yeah. Saltwater fishing. So like, you know, I think I really want to start maybe getting a little more into the freshwater, going back to my roots in the Great Lakes. I mean, I really want to go back, but I also I want to start challenging myself and putting myself in situations where, you know, like putting myself in a new fishery where I have no help. You know, I'm like, all right, I want to figure this out. The only problem with that is the only cost of that is time.
Yes.
You know, and time is very valuable.
Absolutely.
Time is, that's the problem I've run into.
Could not be more correct. It's not a matter of whether or not you can figure it out. It's how quickly you can figure it out. And there again is it's not about catching the fish. What you're saying is that what gives you great pleasure is not catching the fish. It's not the end result. You hire a guide for that.
Yeah.
What makes you happy and what makes a lot of fishermen happy is the act of going up there and figuring it out. How do you navigate this lake? What's the best time of day? Are there tides? Is there all these different factors.
Did you see the video? And this is totally like, this is going back to absolute trash fish. But did you watch the video where we caught the parrotfish on seaweed?
Yes. So I thought that was actually really cool. So I don't watch all your videos, but I have watched a few, and that was one that I thought was really cool.
So we were beach fishing. The pompano were biting. I love catching pompano, but the waves were so big, we couldn't. Rod got washed on the beach. You know, the line got washed on the beach. So like, okay, that's not happening. And I had a guest in from town, Kyle. He's actually the fish whisperer. You might know him on Instagram.
No, I see his videos, man. I've been following that guy for years. So cool. He feeds the bass.
Yeah, super cool guy. So we're like, okay, this isn't working. So now we got to go to a jetty, and you know, we're sitting there and watching these parrotfish. Wonder if they would eat a sand flea. You know, I had a sand flea with us. I'm like, so we started putting sand fleas in the water because I know they got to eat something. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, they're not eating that. Then we're actively targeting these fish. And then we do the tide switches. It's outgoing tide now. And the seaweed starts flushing out. And these things are airing out on the seaweed. I'm like, is there crabs in there? I mean, what are they eating? Then it clicked. Dude, they're just eating the seaweed. So we sat there and snagged seaweed. I said to myself, I can't believe I'm actually trying to catch seaweed right now. This is one thing I've always hated my whole life. I hate seaweed. So we're trying to catch the sargassum. We put on the hook and we start crushing them. And then the next day we go there, and we spent that whole day, we figured it out. And the next day, all right, we got this dialed in now. We go and get a big, and then one thing we learned with the seaweed, you have to change the water every hour. If the seaweed starts changing color, they won't eat it.
They won't eat it.
It has to be fresh. The sargassum has to stay alive. So that seaweed was just as important as keeping live as pilchards or any other bait. You had to change that water.
Interesting.
So we went and got a big glop of seaweed. We put it in the bucket. We changed our water, and we caught like 40 parrotfish that day. The next day.
That's super cool. That's a pioneering kind of thing. I've never seen anybody do that.
It was awesome, you know. And like that's, I'll never forget that. Like and then I showed my friends. He's like, this is like a world record. How did you figure this out? Who, dude? The funniest thing. Like that, you know, there's a bunch of people fishing on that jetty. Everyone was fishing with seaweed, but like everyone was like, "Can I borrow a piece of seaweed? Can I borrow a piece of seaweed?" And everyone's trying to catch these parrotfish.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because that's all was biting.
Right.
You know, like we're sitting there whacking them left, right, and center, and then they're throwing lures trying to catch jacks or.
But the only reason why that happens, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're out there to do a video.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening. So now you need to do a video. And this seems to be happening.
Exactly.
So you try to figure it out. See, that's a lot the same as why I like fishing tournaments and why I feel like fishing tournaments were really important to my development as a fisherman, because the wind's blowing. It's cranking. It's 30 knots. Well, the tournament's still happening.
Yeah.
Would you have gone if it was a charter?
No.
No. Would you have gone if it was you and your buddy? No. but you've paid to be in this tournament. Everybody else is going. Now you're going in conditions that you previously thought were completely impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Probably nobody's going to catch anything. So you don't fish that hard the first time you do this. And you come back and there are weights on the board that you can't even believe. And it's not BS because they went on a scale. Everybody saw them. It's real.
Yeah.
And you saw exactly who did it, and you see exactly who performed and who didn't. And I found that to be incredibly interesting. And then it's raining. Can you catch them in the rain? Yeah. Well, the tournament keeps going in the rain. The tournament keeps going in every condition. And you see who is consistently a performer.
Of what you're saying, I've noticed some of the most special things I've ever witnessed has happened in windy, rainy conditions. Like I've seen things like I'll never forget. I'm on the beach one day. It's the most miserable weather you've ever seen in your life, and there's sailfish everywhere, jumping 100 yards off the beach.
Wow!
Like what's going on right now?
Barometric pressure.
Something. Well, like my best wahoo day ever. We, in Florida. Florida. We're high speed trolling, and the storm rolls in, dude. And I've learned this now, that 40-minute window, when that pressure drops, those wahoo, every fish is just chewing. We every 20 minutes, bite. We were just whacking left, right, and center. And the moment they start raining, bite stopped. Stopped completely. As the storm was ending, bite turned back on. So they definitely respond to that pressure.
Yeah.
And you can only learn that is if you're out there on those bad days. If you don't go out on those bad days,
then it's just theoretical.
Yeah,
it's probably not that good out there. Or I hear people kill them on these days. But if you're not out there, you don't have that experience. It's not one more thing that you can draw from. Trout fishing it makes it really freshwater trout fishing. It's very obvious what happens. The storms roll in, the barometric pressure changes, and every insect in the river comes up, and you have this massive hatch.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden there's just fish, and then the clouds part and it stops.
Yep.
And so it's really, really super obvious, and you're actually targeting those days, and you see that, and you're working towards that. But in the saltwater, it's a little different.
There's a spot I fish. I'm not going to name it, and some people that are listening might know it. If the conditions aren't the nastiest thing that you've ever witnessed in your life, you're not going to catch tarpon. The nastier, bigger, nastier it is, the better the fishing is. The better you'll hook 50 tarpon in 1 hour.
Wow!
But if it's flat calm and there's no wind, you ain't seeing nothing. You ever see the video of the blacktips I got with the poppers and them blowing up and doing backflips and that?
I've seen some amazing footage that you've done with the blacktips. I don't know if it's the one that you're talking about.
I've tried to recreate that day. I filmed that in 2015. I tried to recreate that day for the last 3 years. Can't do it. And it was a rainy, those 2 days, if we filmed that over 2-day stretch, it was rainy, southeast wind. It was blowing pretty good. And the most important thing was cloudy. What I've learned with blacktips, if it's cloudy or low light, because of the way their eyes are, they will feed unbelievable. They'll feed, if it's midday, what I've learned, you have to downsize your lure to the point where it's like this big. And with fluorocarbon, for them to even think about trying to eat it. If you don't downsize your lure and downsize your leader,
have you tried those spool techs?
Yeah,
you fish with those?
They break them. Yeah. Those things aren't designed for like an 80-pound fish, like a blacktip. When they jump and spin,
they have some.
I've caught a lot of big fish on those, but they, and even that's too big. You have to throw the smallest one possible. Midday, they won't eat it. They won't. It's not the leader. It's the lure that scares them.
Yeah.
You have to, like I've noticed that, but in low light, it's unbelievable. They will bite. I've had it, Tom, where I get like that. That's what I like. My favorite thing is top water blacktips on lures. You have to get out there the moment you see this first glimpse of light. The second that sun hits the surface, the bite's over. It's done.
Very similar to tarpon.
Yeah.
Very similar.
And they won't bite, and then if you want to give them a chase, like you could be right there, like they're, on the beach, you have one advantage over the boat. The boat, because there's so many big hammerheads that are trying to eat the blacktips, the boats spook all the sharks. They feel that presence. They feel something big. They shut off immediately. From the beach, you can approach them much more stealthy. You can creep up on them, and they, but if you get too close, they're done. Like bonefish on the flats, they're gone.
Yeah.
And I've thrown like 3-inch poppers at free swim, like blacktips that are cruising the trough. The second the popper lands, they bolt in the other direction. They just, the splash spooks them.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
They're very smart. They're a very smart animal. I think the blacktip is a in my experience, fishing for all these different sharks. Some seem to rely way more on scent. Some rely way more on feeling this stuff. And the blacktip seems to be more of a sight feeder. And that's what I've always thought, that they're seeing. We would catch them on tarpon flies a lot of times. Like you're dredging a channel, you're not seeing what's out there, and you get hooked up, and you make, all of a sudden it jumps. What's that? And you look, and then it's running just like a tarpon and going, and then it's a blacktip.
Can you imagine if blacktips? I know in South Africa they do. Can you imagine if we could catch blacktip that are like 300 pounds?
Whoa, that'd be awesome.
Imagine how hard those things would fight.
That's what you have to do. You have to go there and catch them.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, how much money you want to spend? You got to go to Durban. You got to go down to all those. Just those trips cost money. But that's what I'm saying. Like the freshwater, we all know this in the industry. That's the biggest market, right? So I grew up freshwater fishing. So I want to go back and relive what I did. I want to go back to the places where.
Does that mean that you would move?
No, definitely not. Mm-hmm. The moment I came to Florida, I knew I would live for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. There's no way.
John Norris, battling drug cartels in national forests and author of Hidden War, episode 735.
I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of illegal grow cartel hoop houses we were finding. We raided 4 that day out of the 15,000 estimated in that county, and it was a literal train wreck. The amount of plants, the illegal wells that were dug, the water diversions, the poisons in the water, water trucks, driving into like the city of Doris in the middle of the night and tapping their massive public water supply for the whole city and for the school and everything else, and just stealing that water in the middle of the night in 20, 30, 40, 100 water trucks to get enough water to grow this illegal weed.
Wow.
That gets put on U-Haul trucks and goes straight back to where you're at and the Midwest. And we're watching these, as a civilian looking covert documentary team, watching these crews all day long, daylight and after dark, get on, highway 97 up there and start that eastern run right in Northern California to take all that weed back east. And literally nothing was stopping them. And you talk to the sheriff that's doing the best he can, and his hands are tied with his little agency and some great marijuana cops that I've worked with forever. They're like, yeah, no one's helping us. Governor's not helping us because we're not allowing the regulation in our county. We know it's not going to work. It's failed. We're not getting federal help. And at what point do you declare this threat to our American public and to our waterways and our wildlife a national emergency enough to have federal intervention and say, okay, we need to handle this like a massive earthquake that just leveled a state, or a massive wildfire campaign, and not only throw money at it, but get a task force and bring in 300 officers and go hit a strike team and go grow by grow, and look at regulation changes so we can get some felonies back in this. I politicked adamantly when I was a lieutenant of the team and we knew regulation was coming, and I was doing presentations to lobbyists, governor staff, conservation groups, grower groups that were going to come out and be legal now, angler groups, you name it. And I said, guys, we know we're going to regulate. We think if you're going to regulate, this could actually help stop these cartels. Just regulate correctly and don't lessen the heat or the acceleration of going against these outdoor criminals. And they did just the opposite. They watered it down to get votes, to get it to pass. They saw big dollar signs. And, between the money and the special interest, when that starts driving the bus for policy, especially on cannabis regulation, wildlife, waterways, wildlands, and more importantly, public safety are going to suffer. And that's why it's the Wild West in Northern California, and something we're trying to blow up to say, red alert, guys, this is what's going to happen in every state. And it's the direction it happens in every state because everybody sees those dollar signs, Tom, and that's the problem. So massive percentage of cartels doing it because they can. I mean, we're inviting them in because of the law structure and giving them a free rein with no deterrence because they have nothing to lose except a couple plants.
It would seem like to me that, well, first of all, this is the side of the story that most people don't see, that they're thinking, oh, we'll legalize marijuana. It's going to be great for everybody. It'll, we won't have to chase down these criminals and everything, for a little bit of weed, we won't be putting people in jail. There'll be less people in jail, all of that. And that's a fine story, but they're not hearing this side of the story, which is that, that's not the problem. The people that are buying, $10 worth of weed on the street, that's not the problem. The problem is, poisoning your entire watershed, trying to grow this. And it would seem like that when you make it legal, that it would discourage this type of activity, or that when you make it legal and people are paying the proper fees and the proper taxes and getting the proper licenses to do this, that the government would be like, okay, well, we are going to make sure that we put the hammer down on illegal grows. So we're protecting the people that are doing it legally, and we're really putting the hammer down on the people that are doing it illegally. But it seems like that once it became legal, that the illegal black market has grown far more than the legal market, which has actually grown.
Spot on.
I mean, and so why is that? I mean, why is it that when you legalize it, it enhances the black market?
Well, and that's the heartbreaking part about this whole thing, man. And I keep in touch with my old teammates and the new guard, and watch what's happening in cannabis enforcement very closely in California, because it's a template now for what I discuss, like we're talking about today, and with every state that's looking for prevention to make sure this doesn't happen in their state. And then looking at national regulation as an option, and what would that look like with the current administration looking at federally regulating and allowing regulated cannabis nationally. It's just poor law structure. That's the bottom line. It's not because we don't have the people that can do the enforcement correctly. It's not because we don't have the heart of numerous law enforcement officers, well beyond just Fish and Wildlife, my old agency, that want to see this stuff organically pure if it's going to be on a legal market, that it's documented properly, that the cartels are not in this mix, that they're not embedded, either poisoning our people or undermining the legal market. So when you make that crime of illegal cannabis anybody violating the cannabis law now or not doing it under proper regulation, to make that a misdemeanor, I mean, a traffic violation is a misdemeanor. Mm-hmm. Most non-violent crimes are misdemeanors, and they don't have jail time as a deterrent, especially with the way our jail systems are now, and the overcrowding and everything. There's just no deterrence to keep them from doing that, and there's no incentive for legitimate growers to stay in a legitimate market.
Yeah,
I mean, and I'll take it a step further. And, we're in post-production on the Call Sign Trailblazer documentary right now, where we interviewed several legitimate growers that had previously been black market growers, way back in the day. And they saw this opportunity in California to come into the light. They always, even when they were doing it illegally, they were very environmentally conscious. They were conserving water. I mean, squeezing every drop of water they could and using as little as possible on their cannabis to make sure they used, they didn't impact the watershed any more than they had to. Completely organic, what they call DEM, Dragonfly certified, which is, it's so stringent, and the stuff has to be so organic, it even exceeds like what our agricultural fruit products and vegetables we would eat. And those people that are now in the regulated market are going broke. They're being undermined by the black market and the cartels, and they're done. And they're absolutely done. They're going to get out of cannabis production entirely because they're literally losing their rear ends every single year. It was crazy to see that as we're interviewing these growers, it's not only the cartels undermining them through the black market and poor law structure, meaning we're incentivizing the black market right at the governmental agency level and regulation level, but the infrastructure of the distributors that are supposed to pay these legal growers for their product that they put out on a legal dispensary market, because these farmers, by the law structure, cannot sell directly to consumers like a farmer's market, right? They have to go through a distributor, just like a retailer, you know, in sporting goods, to make an analogy that you and I are familiar with, or our brands. And these distributors are not paying these growers. And I have one grower that her and her husband have an exemplary grow site. It's got Department of Fish and Wildlife, you know, certified, inspected signs all over it. Their water conservation model was something I'd never heard of. It was awesome. Like a $1.5 million outdoor grow site up in Lake County. And she said, I've had distributors, they've got award-winning cannabis, completely certified, organically pure, winning awards. And I think she said $600,000 were owed to her and her husband from these distributors, 3 different ones. Wow. And she hasn't been paid a dime in like 2.5, 3 years. And there's no backlash on these distributors through the what they call the Department of Cannabis Control, the DCC in California, because they're not equipped to deal with this. There's no accountability. So we legalized, we saw dollar signs, we made it a misdemeanor out there. We invited all the cartels, Asian and Mexican, to come into California, and now and many other states. And that's simply why it's not working. Is when you start enforcement with a poor law structure like that, you've kind of crippled, hogtied all these officers where they're walking around hopping on one leg with everything else tied behind their back. And, you know, that's kind of a brutal analogy to look at it, but that's seriously what's happening. And it's something we're trying to turn around any way possible. Wow. And not only California, but nationally.
Well, it seems like with it trending that direction, that the legal growers are going out of business and can't make it, that there's still a market for medicinal marijuana, legal dispensaries. So where are they getting their product? Does that lead to getting cartel weed into the legal dispensaries somehow or another?
There is some of that getting into the dispensaries, but most of the dispensaries, by and large, that we see generally have what they call seed to sale tracked cannabis, and it is done legally. It's registered. It's not cartel run. The problem is that the black market has undercut the price so much that even all black market cannabis right now is down to $300 to $600 a pound, which 3-4 years ago you're talking $2,500 to $3,000 a pound.
Wow! So
most of the black market cannabis that's produced in California is going back east through kind of a vertical distribution model that the Asian cartels are really getting great at. Especially, we noticed on what we were seeing in Siskiyou County and seeing this stuff go back east. They're making the big money on the black market on the cartel front. The dispensary folks, they're barely breaking even.
Yeah.
And you're going to see more and more dispensaries go under because they're going to experience the same thing that these regulated growers, right, that have this pure product on a farm, like I just mentioned, in Lake County. That stuff is slated to go to dispensaries. That's the good stuff going to dispensaries. But because it's so undercut on the black market, people are buying their stuff off the black market because even though the stuff is largely toxically tainted. What's that?
You think dispensaries could be buying off the black market because it's so expensive otherwise? Or is that's not what you're saying? Right? Just to be clear.
No. There is some of that going on. I mean, obviously, some people are going to stay in business and stay afloat. You're going to see some black market in dispensaries.
Right.
We've tracked it in the past. We don't know the full extent of it because it's something you just can't deal with all the time with all the stuff going on the raids we have to do on the legitimate black market, illegal. We know this stuff is illegal. We know it's going to the black market. I'm dealing with that. But the dispensaries are getting their legitimate weed from these legitimate growers through that distribution model. And these legitimate growers aren't getting paid. And then the dispensaries are getting less and less and less money for regulated, toxically, pure cannabis. And then they look at their registration and their inspections and their oversight and their overhead, and it's massive amounts of money. And it's always in the red now unless you're a massive conglomerate right now. Dispensaries just aren't thriving.
Wow. That's really strange because you would think, a lot of people say, wow, that's the business to get into, right? Like, I mean, it seems like they're popping up all over the place. and it seems like the public demand is higher than ever. And
it is.
It seems like that the dispensaries would be the business to get into.
Clay Hayes, Alone Season 8 winner, episode 657.
And that's one of the things, I mean, when I was out there, like, I guess after about day 12 or so, I mean, I wanted to come home. Like, I didn't want to be there. I wanted to come home like every day. And that's one of the things that kept me out there, is they did believe in me. I mean, the boys were like 100% convinced, like, oh yeah, game over, you're going to win. And I was like, there's no way that I was going to tap out, you know, when with them, you know, having that idea in their head.
Yeah. Wow. So you end up making it 74 days. Is that the number that
Yep.
you made it? And you could have gone longer. I mean, you seem like you were just hitting your stride at that point. So when you're, you know, I don't know how long it's been since you have gotten out of the woods and you get back to your regular life. But you've had a good amount of time to reflect on these 74 days. You've written a book about it. What did these 74 days do for you and your relationship with your wife and your kids, and just did it? I know that it changed you. I mean, you can go on a weekend camping trip and come back, and it has changed you in some way, shape, or form. 74 days is legit. I mean, by yourself, 74 days. So have you had an opportunity to kind of say, you know, like, this is the major takeaway from that deal? And there's probably tons of more, but I don't know. I'm sure you've had tons of time to reflect on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's having time like that. The unique thing about Alone, or any kind of experience like this, is you're completely taken out of your everyday life, where you have responsibilities and distractions, and there's always things to occupy your time. And when you're completely removed from that, like when I was in the woods, my only responsibilities or obligations were to feed myself and not get eaten by a bear. That's it. That's the only things that I had to do. And so you can look at your life like from a step removed. You get a different perspective on your entire life, and that is super, super valuable, and something that's so very rare today. I wish that everyone could do that, because when you can do that, you see paths that you're going down that might not be the best way to go. You question how you live your life. Why do you do things the way that you do them? Are you living your life in accord with your core values? I mean, that's something that's super valuable. And this experience gave me the opportunity to do that. And one of the things that it teaches you, one is to suffer well. Mm-hmm. Another one is to find opportunities in every obstacle. And that has to do with how you look at things. You know, things happen to us all the time, and we can either look at them and say, oh, this sucks, this is bad. And it will be bad because of your perception of it. Or you can look at that same thing and say, okay, well, you know, this has happened. How do we move past this, or how do we use this to our advantage? I mean, that might seem a little bit cliche, but when you're out there, it's like, it's so true. You know, so many things happen. And one of the things that, one of the perfect examples of that is my fishing and the deer that I ended up getting. So I think I caught, like I said, 6 or so fish on that fishing rod, but I did all of that in like the first 2 weeks. And then after that, I couldn't catch a fish on that rod. And so by the time I ended up killing this deer, I hadn't caught a fish in like a week, and I was running out of fish. And so I went hunting. Now, so you look at that and say, man, the fishing sucks. This sucks. This is bad. I can't catch a fish. Well, the bad fishing led me to go hunting. If I hadn't gone hunting, I wouldn't have got the deer. I might not have been the last one. And so did that situation really suck? I don't know. I mean, it ended up being
or
the
was
right.
It was a doorway to a new situation.
Exactly. And so one of the things that I really came to realize is you can't know. It's impossible to know if something is truly good or bad until time gives you the perspective to look back on that thing. And then the last, like the really big thing, I think that's like a universal realization for everybody that goes out there and spends a significant amount of time, is how important your family is to you. Like, that's everything. I mean, everything else is peripheral when you're out there. And that's one of the things that you really come to realize is your family is the most important thing in your life.
Wow. And did you always, I'm interested in the mindset of looking at every obstacle as an opportunity. Do you think that that you kind of have always had that, or did this just kind of solidified it even more, or did this change the way that you think about that?
I think that's always kind of been part of my operating system. I don't get, like, something happens that's not conducive to whatever direction I think I want to go. I've never been one to get hung up on that and worry about it. I'm looking like, okay, how do I get around this thing? How do I get over this thing? How do I get past it? But going through a situation like this, it really just, it takes things that you kind of know in theory, and just like, now it's part of, it's part of your soul. It's in your bones, type of thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there's, like, you come back and you have these realizations like we're talking about. But at some point, do you ever see yourself, like, you had these realizations of, this is why I go down this road, or this is why I act this way, or this is why I do these different things, like you were explaining. And then you come back and you think, I'm not going to do that anymore. But then you get back into the real world, and there's a little bit of social media, there's a little bit of other things. Do you find yourself slipping back into those habits and catching yourself and saying, no, this is the lesson I learned out there. Why am I doing this?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You do. And it's something I have to constantly remind myself. It's one of the things that I wrote about in my book. It's like, it's amazing. I think it's in the postscript. It's amazing how you're out there and you're like, this is it. Like, this is my core being now. And then you get back into the real world and you can start to lose that stuff. And so I do have to, I got to remind myself of these things every single day, but I do now. I do remind myself of those things. And it, those lessons that I learned there, they're part of who I am now.
Yeah. Do you think, like, so many people will go on, a camping trip or get out into the woods and have like a very small degree of what you went through, right? They'll just get back to nature. I find myself doing it. You go on an elk hunting trip, you go on a deer hunting trip, you go on a fishing trip. Everything is just so cool. Like, everything's great. And you're thinking, okay, well, these are the most important things. And then you go back into your life and you kind of find yourself slipping. And then it's, it's time for a reset, man. I got to get back out there. I got to do that again. And there is that reset. There is that full-on reset to where if you haven't been out in the woods for a while and then you get back out there, you're like, yeah, this is it. Why do I not come out here more? And it's, well, because I got a family and a job and all these other things. And these are the things that I love to do. But you got to hit that reset all the time. And it seems like with you on an extreme end of this, of having 74 days out there, and even you're saying, yeah, man, you get back and you got to remind yourself, you got to hit that reset button, you got to get back out there. And is that what you're doing with your family now, and taking your boys out there and your wife, and when you pack the wall tent up and go elk hunting for the month of September, is it like you're doing that for your family and for a reset of your own?
Well, I think for me, it's the reset is more of just like I'll catch myself doing things and I'll say, you know what, that's not the direction I want to go. Right back here. That's where I need to be. But as far as getting back into the woods, like, yeah, I mean, that for my whole family, I think that's really important. I mean, I just got back from a backpacking trip with the boys, took them into one of the alpine lakes up here in North Idaho, and went and got bit by bugs and caught a bunch of cutthroat trout. So it was a lot of fun. But it's, yeah, I feel very, very fortunate because that's what I do for a living. And that's just what we can do all the time. Being in the woods is just a normal thing for us.
Mark the Shark, the Darth Vader of sport fishing, episode 100.
And the sharks that we catch, half of them wouldn't even survive, even if I did decide, or the customer decided to let them go.
Right.
I mean, they just come to the boat and they're just totally exhausted. Sometimes they're tail wrapped, they're drowned. There's all kind of different scenarios that the sharks aren't going to live after you catch them.
Understood. And so I think that some people may have in the past get kind of a misunderstanding of your message. Like, you hate sharks.
I don't hate sharks. I mean, I enjoy seeing a shark swim away, actually. But if I get a big tiger shark, like I know a big bull shark, which are dangerous, I'm going to kill that shark. Because eventually that shark might eat my kid swimming at the beach. That's how I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
A sandbar shark, fine. You might get a thresher shark that doesn't have any threat to any humans because they're deep water. I'll tag them, let them go. But, bull shark, tiger shark, big hammerhead, we're most likely going to kill those.
Okay. And so then a few years ago, I guess, somebody sends you this video of them killing a shark, but in this different way.
Yeah, that was just torture. That was just totally disrespect. And when I saw that, when they sent me that video, I was like totally shocked. I was actually fishing that day, and I showed the customers because the kids showed me. They sent it to me, so I showed the customers. They go, "Hey, look at this, man!" And they all go, "Oh, wow."
Yeah. And so the video that we're talking about were these jokers dragging a shark behind the boat like a water skier almost by the tail. Like
live shark.
Yeah, live shark, and it's skipping and it ends up tearing apart, I guess. And
I've got that picture too after.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
It was a horrible video.
No.
And so they, like what I'm saying is like there's a misinterpretation of your message because those guys are like, you know who would like this video? Mark the Shark. I'm sending it to him, man. He's going to love this. Check out what we're doing. And then there was an obvious different reaction from you. Like, that's disrespect.
They just crossed the line with that. I mean, you don't torture any living creature. We never torture an animal. Never. If we're going to kill a shark, we're going to kill him, humanely and quickly. And that's it. Done. Not torture him, laughing and dragging him behind a boat 50 miles an hour. That was just like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, that got me going. So, and that's when I posted it on. And that's when it went viral.
Yeah, it goes viral. And then FWC
they got in trouble.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's uncalled for. And, from what I heard from those kids, they were doing other stuff to other animals as well. So it wasn't just a one incident. So
right.
I think FWC took that into effect when they came down here. I did a couple of interviews with them after the fact too. So.
Yeah. So do you think that there's any reason to alter your message at all so that people aren't misinterpreting it?
Who's misinterpreting it?
Like those kids? Like that? No, not. I mean, don't misunderstand. I am no.
No, I understand.
Yeah. I just kind of wonder, like, those guys obviously misinterpreted the message.
Yeah, they just thought I was gonna get a kick out of it and give them a thumbs up and laugh it off like they did. But disrespectful, torturing, that kind of stuff. You just crossed the line, man.
Right.
In my book.
Yeah, and so they obviously get what they deserve because that was really bad. I mean,
yeah, that thing got worldwide attention like within hours. It's like you just don't do that,
right? To anything,
right? to any animal, any living creature, any God's creature.
And so, that's where it's interesting. That's why, kind of when I'm following you and kind of watching what you're doing, and I'm a charter boat captain myself, or was for a long time. It's like, I don't think this guy, there's more to this guy. Right. And then there's this,
I'm a soft side. I mean, believe it or not, you can ask somebody that's really close to me that would tell you that, but probably 99.9% of people, well, they don't deserve to know that.
You keep your soft side to your closest.
Yeah, it's behind the vault.
Right. And you're raising kids. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 at home, and they're all love to fish, and they know the value of, life and not to torture anything. And if we're going to kill it, then we're going to put it to good use, like eat it or give it to somebody else, donate it. But it's never going to waste.
Right.
Never.
So that was the other thing I saw, is that you're donating a lot of your fish to the homeless shelters. And what's your connection to the homeless shelters?
We just started doing this last year, and I kind of figured that if we're going to kill the sharks, or if a shark is dead, or if any other fish for that matter, sailfish too, if we're going to make sure it's dead, we're going to donate it and help somebody that's, starving to death, like the Camilla's House in Miami. I've been dealing with them for a while now, and they really appreciate everything that we do for them, because they've got hundreds and hundreds of people just sitting out there every morning looking for some kind of food. And, the sharks are fine as long as they're kept good, iced down, and I take good care of them. I got them right away, and they're eating sharks all over the planet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with a shark.
Do you eat them?
I just had a fella the other day. I gave him a shark, and he made some empanadas, local guy, and actually it was very good. I've eaten some small sharks. I haven't touched the big ones, because I usually just give them to the homeless shelter. Yeah. But the little sharks are fine, man. I mean, if they know how to prepare them and they're fresh, there's nothing wrong with them.
How do you prepare them? Do you know what they're doing?
Well, I'm not a chef, so I mean, but they tell me that as long as it's fresh and iced down properly right away, it tastes like any other fish. Not a fishy taste though.
Yeah.
But it's very, very tender, and like this empanada guy the other day, it was awesome, man. I was just biting into it, and it tastes like beef almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. And so the homeless, were you drawn to that for any particular reason, or you just kind of sitting out there thinking that fish is dead and we're just going to let it sink to the bottom?
No, I've never done that. Never done that. And in Miami now, I see the homeless all over the place where I travel, and I just put 2 and 2 together, and I called a couple of organizations, and I said, hey, would you like me to come by the kitchen and bring you some fish once in a while? And they said, absolutely. So I go in the kitchen, like I own the place now. I go there in the mornings before I go to work, and I drop up the fish, and everybody's happy. It's great. So win-win situation.
Do you get your kids involved in that?
Well, they're still kind of young, and but all my stuff that I donate to is usually in Miami, and they're up in Pompano. So, but they know what I do. They're aware of what's going on. So I'm kind of getting them ready for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think they might step in?
Well, I mean, you can't force them. The kids nowadays, you know how they are. But I know Crockett just adores fishing.
How old's Crockett?
He's just 3.
Okay.
No, he's great. But Maverick's been fishing all his life. Matter of fact, he got maybe a little bit too much of it. So I gave him the last year off. He doesn't have to fish with me anymore. He doesn't have to go on his boat.
How old is he?
He's 12.
Okay. And was he working on the boat?
Yeah.
In the summertime or whatever?
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Is he homeschooled?
Well, no. When he's not going to school.
Right.
Like the weekends and all summer long for the last 4 or 5 years. That's his
he ought to have
one of his bibs right there.
He ought to have a pocket full of cash.
Well, it's a lot of work for him. He's not out there fishing like people think we're out there fishing. We're not fishing. We're like making sure your customers catch fish. He's not actually having the fun of actually fishing himself. So he doesn't they don't grasp it right away. It's work right now. It's
certainly learning what a hard day's work is.
Oh yeah, he knows. And I kind of burned him out a little bit, and I was afraid of that. So I gave him the last year off, and hopefully he'll like it again. And we'll see.
He started playing sports or something in the year off.
He's a book guy, man.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he's like, I don't know where he got that from. I hated books when I was growing up, but he's so smart. He does all the stuff in school. He goes to school early and does all the PA systems. He goes into the office. So he's probably too smart to be a fisherman. I mean, nothing, no offense about that, because I'm a fisherman too, but I think he might be too smart.
Yeah. Well, does he show interest in the PA system and stuff like that? Does he help you with your videos or do any kind of editing?
Nobody helps me with anything in my business.
Really?
I'm a one-man operation, man. I wish somebody did, but I like to do it the way I want to do it. And it's a certain way that I know, this little niche that I have, and nobody can do that. I mean, when I'm gone from this business, it'll be over.
Have you ever tried to bring somebody in and try to help you?
Yeah, but that's more aggravating than it's worth. Especially with the millennials, that's not happening, man. No way.
What kind of aggravation do you experience when you try to bring somebody in?
Well, first of all, somebody calls me. If I have somebody answer my phone or something, they want to talk to Mark the Shark. They don't want to talk to some guy, then some girl. And it just doesn't work out. It's just not the same, And then the videos, the people don't really know what video I want to post or how I want to post it. It's a whole different world, It's you've got to be involved in it. You got to be right in the middle of it. You've got to be like a conductor. You got to be like the 3-ring circus with a hat, Barnum and Bailey. You got to know exactly what everybody's doing and how it's going on. So, again, I'm a one-man show.
How does it work with your mates? Do you have long-standing mates?
Yeah. I mean, my one mate, Ryan, has been with me for 22 years. And I don't think anybody has a longer teamwork in the industry than us together. It's hard for him too, because he's married with kids, but he's devoted. He comes out here every day. He's working with me. 90% of his trips are with me. I have another guy too who's been with me for 5 years, but most of the guys, man, and I couldn't do without them.
Right.
Those guys are great. I mean, they help me with the videos. They do all the stuff, and it takes a team. It's not just Mark the Shark. No way. I wouldn't be anything without those guys.
Yeah. What about your do you do international trips? Like people from other countries?
We'll see that picture behind you with the 49 sailfish? That's in Africa. They got a lot of heat too. I killed 49 sails in one day.
Where is it?
It's right in between all those shark jaws up there.
It's hard to see through here because it's littered.
See them all hanging up?
Literally littered with shark jaws in here.
Well, yeah, I do a lot of international stuff. I got hired a few times the last couple of years from people overseas, and I just go there and.
Oh, you go over there? I was thinking they were coming here. But...
Well, I do that too, but most of my overseas people are big time, big money guys, and they'll come over and they'll say, "When you want to come over to my resort and teach my guys how to do this and how to do that," and I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem."
So there you have it. There's some of the best conversations that we've had over the years, 947 episodes and counting. If you have missed any of these or would like to go back and listen to any of these podcasts, you can go to TomRowlandPodcast.com. That's where they all live. You can find every episode on Apple or Spotify or YouTube or everywhere that there are podcasts. The easiest is probably to go to the podcast website, TomRowlandPodcast.com. If you have questions, you can text me 305-930-7346 or email podcast@saltwaterexperience. I'll help you find the episode that you're looking for. We're getting ready to do a collaboration podcast with the Qualified Captain. Looking forward to that at the Hawks Cay grand opening of their marina store. That happens this weekend. So if you're around, please come down and check that out. Otherwise, we'll be back with that podcast coming up soon. I'll see you here or on social media. Out. See ya.